It was great when this place opened, so it was Princess Anne standing here, and then later when we opened Living Links it was Jane Goodall standing here, and both times when the screen went up they gave their talk, you know, there was chimpanzees sitting there they could commune with, so it can be very effective. But it's a bit of a slow screen. Whiten. I'm the director of the Living Links Centre here, and I'm going to give the first talk this morning, which is going to be an overview of Living Links and what goes on there. It's a very quick one, so it'll be 10 or 12 minutes or so. But I also want to talk about the relationships between all of these different facilities that link together with Living Links. So I'll start off talking about Living Links. There it is, most of you are familiar with it. I'll even talk about the image up at the top here, because for people who haven't been here, some important people here, we want to make sure they're standing there where I'm standing in the proper place for a human primate. But I'm not only going to talk about Living Links, because we do have these other centres here. There's the Budongo trail that you're in, and there's the other Budongo, which is in Uganda, which is the original Budongo, the Budongo Conservation Field Station, as it's now called. But all these things are linked together in very interesting ways now, and this has developed over the last few years. They're all linked together, and one important thing that links them together is that the Royal Zoological Society of Scotland, who own the zoo of course, is associated with all of them. And so is the Scottish Primate Research Group, this organisation of primatologists across Scotland. Now 6 Scottish universities, part of the Scottish Primate Research Group, are all involved in each of these as well, and we're partners, the RZSS and the SPRG, in all these enterprises. And I think it's very nice the way that they've evolved into a network. But let me start with just a quick overview of Living Links. Some of you have not been there, many of you have, but the ones who have, I think, probably haven't seen this view very much. This is the aerial view you'd get if you glide over Living Links. In fact, this was a little model aeroplane that our webmaster in St Andrews happens to be an expert in flying, and he put a little camera on it. I'm not trying out the joke today. We've got a trained eagle. I've done that once too many times, but this is the picture that's shown there. And what this shows very nicely, I think, is that Living Links here is made up of 2 large outside enclosures and 2 completely separate communities of monkeys. These 2, the capuchin and the squirrel monkey, are mixed together here on each side. Altogether there's about 60 monkeys, over 60 monkeys, about over 30 on each side in these mixed species communities. And here's the buildings where there's inner houses for each of the monkeys, a central area, and I'll explain a bit more about that in a moment. What I'm going to do now is show you the slightly more giddy version, which is a video as you fly over here. But I think, again, if this will work, it gives you an idea of what Living Links at least was like in 2008 when this video was made, and it looks rather different now. What you see is that it looks rather green, nicely green, so here it is coming up at the bottom. Sorry if the summer makes you a bit seasick. Lovely green trees that the capuchins have largely destroyed, so we've had to deal with that in certain ways. There are these inner areas. Whoops. In fact, let me just hold it so get your breath back. Situated around here are various notice boards and sort of signboards, display boards, which you'll see later, those of you who visit Living Links. And there are many more of them now, and I'm just going to use one of those display boards. It's more or less the one there that you see as you come in, to just go through certain key aspects of Living Links. So I don't know if I click now, it will, no, okay. I thought we'd finish our flight, but never mind. There's this notice board, and just to take it bit by bit, it explains that Living Links, as we call it for short, it's really regarded as a field station of the University of St Andrews. It's actually strictly part of the University of St Andrews. It's the University of St Andrews building, but it's there in partnership with the RZSS, from whom we lease the land for a peppercorn rent. I think it's £10 a year, which is a good deal. And it houses these 2 species, which, as I've said, form mixed species groups in the wild, which is one very interesting aspect of them. There's the capuchins, which are interesting because they're so large brained. They're the largest brained monkey relative to body size, and these little squirrel monkeys, half the size, mix with them. There are more squirrel monkeys than the capuchins. What else? Well, Living Links, it may belong to the University of St Andrews, but it's there to serve this whole Scottish Primate Research Group across what were 4 Scottish universities when we made the board up in 2008. And I'm pleased to say that's now expanded to include Aberdeen, and most recently Heriot-Watt University here in Edinburgh, and there are primatologists in each of these who are part of this group, and the one in Heriot-Watt, for example, has been very active in working in Living Links recently. And we study primates in the wild as well. There's a note here to say that. Why this long title? Living Links to Human Evolution is the full title, and that really emphasises that these animals are our closest relatives, and studying them helps us understand the evolutionary origins of our own human behaviour and psychology. So there's that very human focus, reason for interest in them. What else do we have on this side? Some other things that I don't need to spend too much time on. That just to do with the funding that started the whole thing off, and then it's affiliated with the Budongo Centre, but there's more to say about that. So just to come back to the setup here, on each side are these inner quarters, so each species has its own inner quarter, and in between them is a research room. So that's the same on either side, and these research rooms are where we do some of the research. Some of the research is done actually in the enclosures, both observational and experimental, but these research rooms have a particular facility, which is these cubicles you see over here. This again is a 2008 photograph I got here, and you'll see they're now much more organic, and the actual physical setup's changed. But what this also illustrates, this is the view, 2 views down into the same area, is the importance for us of public engagement with science. So we've made the whole thing so that the public can, as it were, watch the research going on in a goldfish bowl, and all the research there is, as it were, on show. And what you've got here is these cubicles, which allow the monkeys to go from their inner area into the cubicles here, and then through them in various ways as they wish, through to the outside area that you can just glimpse through there. And that means they're very used to this, and we have over the years trained them, habituated them to be very comfortable just sitting in those cubicles, sometimes by themselves, so we can do behavioural experiments with them, psychological experiments, and they're comfortable sitting there, and we get the best performance from them, as it were, natural performance. But that's taken a long while to get them used to that and be comfortable there. Sometimes we have monkeys in adjacent cubicles, or several who are watching others, and we're interested in what does one learn from the other. So, using these facilities, we have a whole diversity of research topics. I just want to quickly skate through a few to illustrate this diversity. So, one at the moment being done on pro-social behaviour, in which we're studying these monkeys, but also chimpanzees and children, looking at this topic of pro-social behaviour. This is behaviour which takes into account the welfare of others, which we think of as something rather special that we humans do. And the questions we're asking here are, well, to what extent are monkeys, chimpanzees, taking that kind of perspective? But then public engagement is important, and we actually have grants. We've had a series of grants to support the work on that. Because it's the Wellcome Trust, that we have that title, Living Links to Human Biology and Medicine. And I'm pleased to say we've got another grant this year, so we're just into the first part of this, and you'll see various evidence for that when you go to Living Links. Then we have a whole series of external funded projects, and I'm pleased to say, I don't know, is Coda here? There he is, at the back. Hello. Okay, so there's Dr. Koda, who's here from Kyoto, and he's studying communication in collaboration with Klaus Zuberbühler. And another project here, Tecumseh Fitch used to be a professor in St Andrews. He's now unfortunately left us for Vienna, but he's still collaborating with us actively, and is going to have people here working with touch screens to understand something about how primates learn about visual patterns in their environment. Then we have a whole series of postgraduate and indeed undergraduate, masters and PhD projects going on. So again, I just quickly run through a few to illustrate the variety of topics. So what do they understand about faces? Can they recognize the faces of everyone in their group? What do they learn from others? Does that build up traditions in these primates? Personality, cognition, and putting here in red the people you're going to hear from this afternoon. So Blake, I'm not sure I've seen Blake yet, but no doubt he'll be here later. Owen's here already, studying learning imitation as his supervisor. These are the supervisors in brackets: Christine Caldwell. Carolina Mayer can't be here, but kindly her supervisor, Amanda, is actually going to talk about that work. Vicky Hartley, I think, isn't in here, but she's in collaboration with Anglia Ruskin, working on colour vision. So you can see the kind of range of topics that the things we focus on. So that was my quick escape through Living Links, just to give you this kind of overview, and through the day you'll hear some more details. I'm the scientific director of that. But then we've got this place you're in, the Budongo Trail, which has been designed also in a sense sort of copying what some of the ideas in Living Links to be a research centre. And although Living Links belongs to the University of St Andrews, is the real sort of university facility, Budongo belongs to the RZSS. So that's a rather different kettle of fish, but it's still an important collaboration between the SPRG and the RZSS. One aspect of which is recently we've had Katie Slocombe, who's with us here today, appointed as the scientific director of that, so from the Scottish Primate Research Group side. So again, you see this partnership in operation with some of the science and the research coming in from the university side, RZSS very much supporting this strongly and collaborating in it. But then the third, before I move to the third, I just want to emphasise that over the last year, the links between these, in the ways I've just been talking about, have been recognised by actually calling this whole setup, recognising that it's a research consortium with actual financial inputs from the various Scottish universities that are involved in it, providing these facilities to study monkeys comparatively with the apes, with the chimpanzees. Okay, but then there's the third wing. Budongo in Uganda, which was the original Budongo. There was the Budongo Forest Project that has been run for decades by Oxford, and over the last few years, since Living Links was set up, the scientific directorship of that has, I'm pleased to say, shifted to the Scottish Primate Research Group under Klaus Zubabula. But the great thing was that RZSS then stepped in to provide the base funding for that, because a modern zoo like Edinburgh is very much concerned with research out in the real world and with conservation, and that's been emphasised by calling it the conservation field station. But from our point of view, it's a facility for doing field research. And all these organisations, I think, interact in these various ways and other ways which I can't go into. And that's been very exciting as that's developed over the last few years. Okay, well, that was it for my overview of Living Links and the way in which all these major facilities fit together. We're going to go on in a minute to, I'm going to hand over to Katie Slocombe to tell you a bit more detail about what's been going on in Budongo and how Budongo works. And then to Kat Hobaiter to tell you a bit more about the Uganda side of the operation. I've just put this up, coming back to our theme of public engagement with science. One of the things we were very pleased to get up last year was this mural. Some of you will be familiar with it, some of you haven't seen it yet. And it was wonderfully inaugurated by Professor Anne Glover, who at the time was the Chief Scientific Advisor to the Scottish Government, as well as being quite a sport in the way she presented herself here. So that was very nice, and she's in fact now been elevated, so she's the Chief Scientific Advisor to the European Commission. So that was a great catch to have her inaugurate this. And the idea of this is to encourage the public to photograph themselves in this position here, just in a very simple and effective way to get over the idea, you are a primate, this is your family, this is where you fit into the natural world. And people will take those away, but then we're going to have, as part of our current welcome scheme, a website where people can upload those. And so we want to reinforce people doing that and making this a really iconic image, we hope, across Scotland and far beyond, by getting scientific celebrities. We had Richard Dawkins here last year, before we had that, so if he comes again, or various other people like some of our connections from St Andrews, we had David Attenborough here last year as well, and Jane Goodall just before we got this up. But if we can get more people like that in here, this really could become iconic, we think. And of course, there are explanations there on the boards you'll see about what this all means. But I did want to put that up because, as I say, we want to make sure we photograph some of the people who are here today who haven't been before. Okay, and I think that's me done. So at this point, I'm going to hand over to Dr. Katie Slocombe.